Hello there, I'm back again to ask you, the listener, an enormous favour. It is Podcast Awards season and the Irish Podcast Awards are very quickly coming up. And I would really appreciate it if you could vote for Real Life Ghost Stories in the Listener's Choice Award for the Irish Podcast Awards. You just need to go to the irishpodcastawards.ie/voting to cast your vote. The voting is open until October the 19th, 2023. You can vote once per email address and you can vote from anywhere in the world. You just need to remember to confirm your vote via email, and I promise you it takes 30 seconds, maybe even a minute at most to cast your vote, and I would appreciate it so much if you could vote for Real Life Ghost Stories. Here's the thing, most indie podcasts don't have budgets to even enter into most of the award ceremonies that go on for podcasting, and voting in a Listener's Choice Award is just a really good way to advertise for that podcast, and the little glimmer of hope that I might actually win brings me a certain amount of joy on a day-to-day basis. So if you are somebody who listens to Real Life Ghost Stories on the reg, if you like the content, I would really appreciate it if you could go to the irishpodcastawards.ie/voting to cast your vote. Thank you. I love you. Enjoy the episode. Hello and welcome to 31 Days of Terror 2023, day number 7. And in this episode I am joined by the wonderful Marcus from Ightham Mote in Kent. Ightham Mote is hidden away in a secluded Kent valley and is a perfectly preserved medieval moated manor house. Emerging from the natural landscape almost 700 years ago, Ightham Mote is built from Kentish ragstone and great Wealden oaks. While its architecture and decoration trace the development of the English country house, its owners provide the stories of a once cherished family home, evoking a deep sense of history. In the tranquil gardens there are streams and lakes fed by natural springs, an orchard, flower borders and a cutting garden. The wider estate offers walks with secret glades and countryside views. Last year I had the privilege of working with them on the run-up to their Halloween season, and I was delighted to get the chance to work with them again this year. This Halloween they have murder mysteries, they have ghost walks, and they have a selection of these events that are family friendly for the little ones also. And if you don't get to do the murder mystery or the ghost walks, it really is just a beautiful place to visit. As always, this episode was recorded using StreamYard, so the audio is slightly different to what you are used to. Also, Marcus was in the office recording this, so at points there is some slight general office noise, some office ambiance, if you will. I hope you enjoy the episode and let me know if you do end up visiting Ightham Mote. I'd love to hear your thoughts about it. And I am joined in my virtual studio by the wonderful Marcus. Marcus, tell us a bit about yourself. Who are you? Why are you here in the least existential way possible?
I will try not to have an existential crisis. Hello, and thank you so much for having me on your show. Yeah, I'm the Visitor Operations and Experience Manager over at Ightham Mote in Kent, which is a very long title to say I do events and then anything else that comes up. Love my job. I work in heritage and history and museums. I've worked all over the country, lots of places that people might have visited. And it can be incredibly random, and that's what makes it really fun. I think I've seen most aspects of human life and events and love putting them on and meeting people and entertaining them, really. So that's what I do. That's what someone pays me to do.
Totally random question that I haven't put on the list of questions that I sent you, and I'm now going to put you on the spot. What sort of events we'll talk about Ightham Mote in a second. Like, what sort of mad, fun, random events do you do at Ightham Mote? Or other places, or other National Trust places?
Bit of everything, I would say. So Ightham Mote, I would say we have a huge focus on our families. People want to come out for a day out with their kids. And that is very much what we do. We can be very friendly and do Easter and Christmas. And I will get on to autumn and October. But we'll turn our hand to anything. We've got we'll come on to a bit of it. But we've got 700 years of history to talk about. We've got a lot to shout about. In the past, what have I done? I have to say, doing freezing cold murder mysteries on a World War One ship, when it really was like icing over, that was a highlight. Running a Regency ball in the Duke of Wellington's home, everyone, and I was like, you can come in costume if you want, and everyone came in costume, and it was more Jane Austen than Jane Austen. That was probably a highlight. That was, if you're into your Vanity Fair, Outlander type things, it was like that, and everyone, it was like a little window into the past. It was probably one of the highlights of my career. It just looked amazing. It really did.
That sounds amazing. And it's so funny because not the last time I was in Ightham Mote, maybe the time before, I went and there was just knights, beating each other out in the garden. And I was like, wow, this is wild.
There are some people I brought, and I was like, the public love it. It's really entertaining. But part of me is just like, I'm going to sit here and watch two people beat 7 shades out of each other. And it's great fun. Like it's really difficult to not enjoy that.
Yeah, I think it's like an intrinsic part of human nature that we just kind of want to see people leather each other every now and then.
And I suddenly realised that that's got to be much better than like a gym membership, because they were getting pretty hot and sweaty behind it as well.
Yeah, they were, and it's been really hot and sweaty in Kent over the last kind of month or so. So I did not envy them.
No, they were really dripping, and hugely entertaining. I think it's a better sport than most of the stuff that's on TV. It's similar to the rugby, but certainly
better costumes.
Yeah, more flamboyant.
So very important question, and this is the one that the listeners all want to know the answer to, and everyone will be judging you, so just bear that in mind, no pressure. What is your favorite horror film and why?
At least I can actually answer this, because they're not my main genre. Outside like the Scream, I Know What You Did Last Summer, I wouldn't go for too many of the modern ones. So mine's a cult classic, a British B-rate movie, Dog Soldiers. Yes, I got a good reaction.
Nobody can see me, but my arms went up in the air. I'm celebrating. Dog Soldiers is my all-time favorite movie.
Really? Yes. Okay, excellent. Okay, well, there you go. I don't need to sell it to you, but I just love it. It's very British humor, very quotable. I watched it, I think, in my early teens on one of those sleepovers, and I had it on DVD until the DVD broke. And it's cheesy, it's low budget, and it's still funny.
It really does stand the test of time. I watched it again recently for a film review for the podcast, and I had this period of time in my teenage years when I had glandular fever and I was really unwell and I had to stay at home, and one of the only DVDs that I had at home was Dog Soldiers, right? So I've watched it about 1 million times, and I watched it again as an adult and I was like, wow, this is still great. This is still so good.
It's still good. And it's one of those things I've got locked in my knowledge that it was always meant to be a trilogy, and it was never made into a trilogy. And I always wish I'd watched the other 2 films. Neil Marshall, the director, does the best episodes of Game of Thrones. Is the link. He does the 2 big battlefield episodes of Game of Thrones. They brought him in for that because he does those dark, moody, there's the evening ones in not the final series where it gets a bit pants, but the other ones, the Bay, Battle in the Bay, and on the Night's Watch Wall, and they. He does gritty, he does realistic. The cast is Sean Pertwee. It's so quotable. Yeah.
I'm so glad you said that. You're the first person that has ever said Dog Soldiers in all of the interviews that I've done, and that makes me so happy.
Okay. And there's another element to it where I was was in the Army Reserves, the TA, and I realised afterwards someone said, "Oh no, the film isn't about professional soldiers because the SAS are hunting the hunters, aren't they? And that's why you've just got these 7 lads moaning about being there and wanting to watch the football because they're meant to be TA on exercise. That's why they're not very professional." And I'm like, I get that. I can recognise some of my mates in the TA in that. Yeah. Kind of it's a bit relatable.
So, question for you, and this is very Dog Soldier specific. So, if you're a listener who hasn't watched Dog Soldiers, why have you not watched it? Okay. But who are you in the team? Are you the leader? Are you the person who is very much plays by the rules? Are you like Spoon, where you are going to be fiery? Or are you the puker? Which one are you?
No, I'm not.
In the face of a werewolf.
No, I'm not Spoon. Favorite character is definitely Spoon, but I'm Kevin McKidd himself, who I always was kind of following the rules, knows what's going on. I'd always say I know what's going on, but I'm not fully invested in being there. When everyone else is moaning, I'm moaning about them moaning. That's It's very much on my vibes. Yeah, I'm enjoying myself if I'm having a good moan about something.
Oh, I'd like to think that I would be Spoon in this scenario, but I wouldn't. I would be the puker. That'd be me. So, good for you that you
Is
can.
that Big Joe?
Yeah, I think it is Big Joe. Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah,
And
no, it's a great one. It's a little bit relatable, and yeah, there's just a great cast. I'm trying to think of who else pops up in that game. There's definitely some more Game of Thrones actors in that as well.
I feel like we can end the interview now. That's all we need.
We just
Never mind
bonded over
anything
Dog
else.
Soldiers. It's great.
Dog Soldiers is all that we needed. But in all seriousness, you are here to talk to me about Ightham Mote. So can you tell me a bit about Ightham Mote? Like maybe I'd never heard of Ightham Mote, and now I've been there twice in the last couple of weeks, and it is a really amazing place. So can you tell me a little bit about it?
Yeah, it is. It is really special. All jokes aside, it's a beautiful house in North Mid Kent, but it's not just any old house. It's Britain's most complete moated medieval manor house. So we are about 750 years old, over 700 years old. There was a dwelling on this site, dwelling back to Doomsday, which was a mill. But then someone decided, oh, look, we have a lovely big lake pond, and we're going to build on this as a show of kind of grandeur, wealth. And what you get is people kind of sometimes think we look like a castle, but basically someone built a fake island on a pond, expanded it, built a hall, and then everyone's added to it over the last 700 plus years. So nobody laid down a blueprint and went, I want to build a palace. I want to build this castle. It wasn't built for defensive purposes, though that's an advantage. All your footpads, your vagabonds going from London to Canterbury or Dover, going over to France. If you need to lock your doors at night back then, basically, or they'll come and take the stuff. So it has that advantage that we're surrounded by water. We've got loads of rivers and lakes, which today makes us really peaceful, really pretty and tranquil. And then we have a kind of assorted layout inside because we were a house until relatively recently in our history. No big names in history. We know who we are. We don't have your A-list celebrities from the past that came and owned the place, but they did visit. Winston Churchill was down the road. Charles Darwin came for a weekend. Those kind of people, but they came to visit like their poor cousins, kind of thing. So that's who we were. So that means that we can talk about different things. We're not overshadowed by one person. And the house has got that higgledy-piggledy feel. I can't think of the technical term. That is how I feel it is. That you step through one corridor and you've probably been seen it. You're in a medieval manor house hall, and then the next room's like a 1950s sitting room. You're like, oh, okay. So it's got quite a unique feel, and that gives us a really nice vibe as well.
Higgledy-piggledy is a word to describe it. Like the last time I was there, which was last week, because it's essentially a big square, right? And it's been added to over the years. And it's exactly that. You're in, this medieval hall, and then you're in like a sitting room that seems quite modern, and it's so strange. And all of the rooms have all these like little hidden gems that it's like all these, like somebody's graffitied on a window like a bazillion years ago.
I love the graffiti. It's really hard to find as well, but there's lots of that kind of thing. You step out of one room and you're back into a tiny little courtyard because they just were like, oh, how do we get from here to there? Oh, we'll just cross this open bit around. So it has that thing of going, it's really practical from that point of view. And lots of people say it's like a house that they feel that they could actually live in. It's got that homely kind of feel to it. There's, you can't really see the kitchens most of the time because they're like, oh, wait, because until relatively recently, someone was living there is their kitchen. But you've got these little pantries and sculleries, and then there are sitting rooms, and then there's bedrooms, and they're not hugely grand. We don't have 4-poster beds and big velvet ropes that are like, when you visit like a palace and you feel like, I could never sleep in a bed that had like ostrich feathers above the headboard. It would be, you'd feel like there's somebody watching you. Or maybe there is.
Yeah. Or maybe there is.
But they're not there now. We've got a really nice kind of spirit with that, a vibe with that.
Before we get into kind of the legends and the stories of Ightham Mote, do you have a ghost story that absolutely terrified you as a child? So fact or fiction, I think everybody has one story that as a child made you afraid to go to sleep at night.
I can't think of any specific ones, but I think it's the old school like vampire ones. When you first learn that like because at first of all, like vampire is a guy who's white and wears lots of makeup and a big cloak. And then you start to hear like the original kind of like Bram Stokers are being eased into you. And it's when you go to sleep, you're not safe because that's when they can come.
Yeah.
That's really unsettling as a child. So I'd have to go with those kind of ones that they get eased into. I love like fantasy fiction. You're kind of the predates like the Warhammer type stuff. The proper nerd you're talking to here, by the way. And those kind of like myths and legends that, because no one explains, oh, it's an Eastern European thing that's come through from Lord Byron's friends. They sat down and they wrote these stories. No, you just get told there's vampires.
Yeah.
And they come in at night and they'll suck you dry for blood and they won't wake you up. That's terrifying. Where you're like, oh, so I can't go to sleep. Great.
I can't go to sleep, and actually there's nothing I can do that's going to stop this.
No. And I can't see them in the mirror and all these things. Like, great.
Brilliant.
Thanks
terrifying. Somebody get the garlic quick.
Yeah, of course, the cure-all to the most terrifying beast in the world, garlic.
Well, listen, I mean, when you eat enough of it, it's pretty repulsive to a point.
Like a strong soup would work. That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, probably would. So you're there as a child, frantically making garlic soup all the time, bringing it to bed. Your parents are like, it's just getting weirder and weirder.
It's getting really strange now. It's really into culinary.
So have you got a favourite legend or ghost story about Ightham Mote itself? And I know there's lots of great legends and stories about Ightham Mote. Again, stories that I didn't know. And now I'm like, how have I never known these?
Yeah. My favourite one is because it's been debunked, if that makes sense, because the history behind the legends are quite fun. So if you look up any of our ghost stories, our most famous one really is the skeleton in the wall, skeleton in the cupboard, sometimes named as, or Dame Dorothy skeleton. And Dame Dorothy Selby was a bit of a boss lady who lived here in the Jacobean era, and I like her. But there's this legend that they found her skeleton walled into the Great Hall, and there's now a little cupboard there that you can ask to see. And this story came about that it was actually her skeleton as she'd been bricked up because she might have been involved in the gunpowder plot. And of course, some of the plotting and scheming took place in this area. And we, in Kent very much have the gunpowder legends today and the gunpowder societies in Kent and East Sussex and the Bonfire Boys and all those kind of things. And she might have been one of the people who'd helped tip off Parliament to James's assassination. It's possible that still happened. What isn't happening is she wasn't buried in our wall because she was buried in the local church. And there's a really ornate memorial to her and her tomb and effigies. But this story goes on, and where we think it came from is lots of people rented Ightham Mote over the years. And for one season, there was a group of medical students. It's always those students. And they rented Ightham. And we think they possibly did like a prank, and they might have brought a cadaver with them. It's really good banter to bring a corpse with you to a booze up. And they might have put it into this cupboard to be like, oh, John, if you go and look in that cupboard for another bottle of wine, and when they opened it up, this body fell on top of them. And that might have been where it came from, because it was originally an alcove, so it wasn't going to be bricked in. It certainly wasn't her. But it's this legend that persists, and people sometimes arrive and go, where was the cupboard that the lady was bricked into? And kind of explaining the history behind that. You've got these multiple stories. Is more fun than probably the truth.
It's amazing that despite the fact there's this ornate memorial to her, that the legend has still persisted, even though physically there is evidence that she's buried in the churchyard. And it just goes to show, like, people don't ever let the truth get in the way of a good story.
Why would you? I was just thinking, truth in the way of a good story. Why would you? There's, and normally, there's no fire without smoke. So there are these stories about how she died. She might have pricked her finger on a spinning wheel because she was a really big into seamstress and tapestries, embroidery. And that has this huge fairy tale link, that you can obviously think of the stories where that comes from. And so you just kind of, why she's just down the road, but you might visit Ightham Mote. You're very unlikely to visit one of the local churches. So people have heard about some elements of us in her. Yeah.
So what's the best thing about working somewhere as unique as Ightham Mote? Because I have to say, even your guys' offices being like in this amazing building, like upstairs, and like it's crazy, it's wild.
I mean, that's one of the things. It's coming to work. We were saying it recently in a little marketing meeting we were having, and we were saying like it's coming somewhere. And you're not walking into a normal kind of London office. We're walking into this. Our office is in the building, and it's being amongst all that. It's really tactile. I can reach out now and stroke history. And it's there, and my window that I'm looking out of now behind the computer screen is how many hundreds of people have looked out of that in the past, and you kind of got these links that, and it's always learning something new. And people say some things to me, but oh, did you know this? And you're like, absolutely no idea. My common reaction is to smile and nod, and but then go away and Google it. Probably someone the other day was talking about, oh, did you know that there was possibly a English Civil War battle fought in the local village? It's like, no. Comes up on no Google search, but there was a general who was buried there and then had his head taken off afterwards because he played off Cromwell versus the king, and everyone thought he was a real treacherous so-and-so. And you're like, okay, is that story or is that actually real? And yeah, because there's a wide history and loads of families, I'll never know it all. And then someone will ask me about that painting, or someone will ask me, what's that rose that's planted over there? And it's like trying to spin all these plates and learn new things, which is not actually my job. Is not to research everything. That would be a full-time job in itself. It's to put it on for the public. So it's taking elements and then putting it back out. There was planes shot down basically at the edge of the garden during the Second World War, and more recent stories, and like which do we talk about, which do we go for? There's so much there, which is quite fun.
And are there any other legends or stories about Ightham Mote that you think might appeal to Real Life Ghost Stories listeners in particular?
Yes, I've got lots actually. So I'd say my favourite one was one I heard of just before I started. It was the shoes in the attic. So those who don't know more about Ightham Mote, we were at the time one of the biggest heritage projects that National Trust did in the 1980s, early 1990s. And this was all filmed on Time Team, which is luckily just come back with Tony Robinson online, but it was all there. And they effectively, if I oversimplify over 10-year, £10 million project, which was a lot of money then, they basically took the building down in quarters to about knee height, because we're on water, you don't want to take it down much lower, and then rebuilt it brick by brick with the same bricks. So kind of took it apart to save it, learn how it was put together. So it fed into a lot of traditional crafts, wood joinery and brickwork. And in doing so, they found a lot of things, both in the moats, found suits of armour, not last called suits of armour, the reenactors that you heard tell me off, what they call the harness of armour, they found, is the correct term, and they found shoes in the rafters. And the shoes in the rafters, we think, was the superstitious serving staff that came. And when they started at a new place, because you'll be there a long time, you want to make sure the witches aren't following you, because the witches come at night time, and then they can steal your soul or put a curse or a hex on you. And it's a bit like, I think, like the cartoons where the bloodhounds are out tracking. It's kind of like that. So witches work on sensors, obviously, we all know. So if you throw one of your shoes into the rafters, when they're coming down places like the chimneys or coming in the roof, they might go after your shoe, get lost in the attic rather than come to you at night. So yeah, I think it really shows just how much people believe this, that you're willing to throw away a shoe is a relatively valuable item then and today. And I'm going to throw it away because I don't want to get hexed. Which I think that shows a real tangible link to those kind of beliefs. It wasn't just, throw a penny in a well. Again, you're throwing away something of wealth. But they genuinely had that belief deep ingrained into their psyche. So that's why I quite like the shoes. And also then we've got preserved beautiful shoes, which in themselves are an item of beauty. Linked to that, we've got quite a few witches' marks, especially in the medieval buildings. We have the interlinked V's for the Virgin Mary, and they're often above fireplaces or circles within a circle to these to help. And obviously the Virgin Mary link is they're good Christians, good Catholics probably, to try to block the pagan, the Satan worshippers maybe coming down the chimneys, basically, that the witches might have been. Again, they're carving them into the stonework, which, it's kind of like a graffiti. It's not something you'd want to do on your boss's fireplace. So it's showing that real belief that this is blocking those dark spirits coming down. So those, again, they can be seen. I'm actually just talking earlier about like putting the lights on them so they can be seen easier, but ask someone, they can show them to you. And yeah, those kind of day-to-day superstitious lives that we've got there. And then if you're I haven't actually read this book, but you might have seen the play Turn of the Screw. Henry James was staying here, the author of Turn of the Screw, now a film and a play. And I believe it was Christmas Eve, so nice little link to, because we do quite big on Christmas. He was there, and we've got an area that we call the oubliettes, the French dungeons, the forgotten hole. Probably, actually, to be boring, probably was just a storeroom, but you can't really get to it, so it looks, when you would have found it later, like a dungeon's oubliette. And he heard noises in the night. Again, to be boring, it's probably rats, but it inspired him to have this old house with voids, with lots of mystical things about it, to write Turn of the Screw. So that's kind of that inspiration's gone through. There was also Green Darkness, a few other books, but the Henry James link, we know he came to stay here, and that's quite a good cultural link as well.
Because I think he said something like, I stayed in a room with a ghost and an oubliette, and thankfully the former remained in the latter, or something about
that's exactly it, actually.
About Ightham Mote. Because I love Henry James and I love the Turn of the Screw.
It's just he thought it was just next door.
Yes, and the listeners will probably have seen The Haunting of Bly Manor, which was really big on Netflix, I think, last year. And The Haunting of Bly Manor is actually based on The Turn of the Screw, which in turn was inspired by Ightham Mote. So it's all linked.
It's all linked. It comes back, and yeah, it's a big one, Turn of the Screw.
Yeah, it's really well worth a read for anybody listening who hasn't read it. It is well worth a read. So have you had your own paranormal experience that you would like to share?
I was trying to think of this, because I was there going, when you're really young, you're convinced. I was convinced there was a ghost in the room when I was really young. And it happened, it was 3 nights in a row. And I was like, you know what? I was so young. I remember it because it was like old bedroom. And I'm like, it's just, there was one evening. So I was working on HMS Warrior, which is a beautiful ship in Portsmouth Dockyards. It's a float. And it's got things like one of the oldest sick bays. I think, if I'm right in saying, the first sick bay on a Royal Navy ship. So people definitely died there. That was never in battle. And just one evening, my colleagues and I were locking up, and we were like the last ones to leave. We used to run weddings and parties and things. So you saw everything, but we'd leave like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and there's nobody about. There'd be like a Royal Navy security guard, and that's it. And none of us wanted to go into one room. That we just had to go in, lock this toilet, go back out, and all of us were just getting this feeling. And we went down one of the gangways, and we all just started to walk quicker and quicker and quicker until one of my colleagues, he was quite an elderly gentleman, he was literally running. And I don't know if we'd worked ourselves up or what it was, but we just felt there was someone watching us out the window. And we went, it's the window's right there. It's like an old gun port, but we had glass in it, so window. And we're like, do we look back? And we were like, no, we think there's something there. And we just had this vibe, and all evening just kind of having this shake walking home, going, there was something in that room. I don't know what it was, but we all felt something in that room. And then thinking, it was the room above where the sick bay was, like the steps go into it. So you're like, if someone's going to die on a ship, you're going to die above basically the hospital room, aren't you? That one felt really, can I say spooky? It felt spooky.
What an amazing place to work, though.
Yeah, it was. And especially when it's basically you and maybe one other person at night. One, you can have fun and explore, and you did. What's in that door? I'll go and get the key and open it. That kind of thing. And the other one is watching like sunsets, and doing weddings was fun. Did murder mysteries, and some people did come on and do paranormal investigations as well.
Oh wow,
that was quite different. Yeah, that was quite fun.
I imagine if it's not something that is in your regular remit, that a paranormal investigation must have been really interesting to watch.
Yeah. I've never having seen a paranormal investigation before. And I was basically told, like, open the ship up, they'll come in, there's a company doing them, and show them to where they can make tea. And people are doing, what's it called, where they're like doing the reaction in the mirror with a torch on their face?
Oh, is it called scrying, I think?
Scrying. Someone did a Ouija board, someone did like sound recordings. My favourite part of that was we used to have a bell that went off on the engine every quarter of the hour, and someone was like asking a question to the beyond, and the bell started going off, and they thought that was like the big. I know, sorry, it's 11:15 at night. That's what it means.
sorry to disappoint you. It's actually just the time.
Just the time, but no, that was and they were all going off and doing. Some were doing like scientific methods, some were doing quite traditional ghost hunting, and there's certainly people had died on board, and when there's very few people, it can be very quiet.
I bet
places take on their own vibes, don't they? So that was a good one. That was a really good one. I like that.
So final question for you. Why should people come and visit Ightham Mote? Before you even get into it, I would just like to say that I think everyone should visit because it is beautiful. Whether you're a spooky gal or not, it is beautiful.
I'm glad you think so. It is a stunning property. So number one, I don't know how many of these I've got, but number one, it's really pretty. We're a very old house with lovely gardens and a big estate. If you're into country walks, it's a good place to set off for and come back and have a tea and a slice of cake. Very much we're National Trust. It's what we do well, and come and do that. But on the other side of things, we've got the things that we talked about. We can show you witch marks. You can look out for the historic graffiti. It's where we're saying the inspiration to turn the screws got on. But also, my side of things is I will try to do the best events that I can. So as I'm sitting here talking to you now, we were going to talk about all these fantastic murder mystery and ghost walk events that we've got coming up. They've actually all sold out. So I would say come and see them, but come and see them next year. Come have to look at our website. Always have a look at our website. We always have something that will be coming up soon, and we've got loads going on. So daytime, we try to have things that are very family friendly, and then evening, obviously, maybe a bit more for the adults, because it's easier to get a little bit more car when it gets dark. So we will I make this promise because it's what I do for a living. We will do our best to have something coming up in the near future that is worth you coming to see, daytime or evening, and come along and see that, because we do put a lot of effort into it. Christmas, we've done this year, Tudor Christmas. We were one of the first National Trust places in Kent to do Christmas at all, going back like 20 years. And so we go quite big. So it's a nice time to go and see things. We'll always have something, whether it's Easter egg trail through to Halloween. Come and see one of our events. Come daytime if you can't or don't want to, and have a nice day out with the family. And also it's one that other people might not have come to see. So it's a really good place to go with a group, because you might have done the top 10 things to come and see. And we're probably just, number 11 on that list. And
as somebody who likes a little kind of casual, slow day trip, it is very much that kind of vibes. If you want to go through during the day, lovely cafe. I mean, listen, if I'm getting cake and good coffee, I'm a happy girl. Little secondhand bookshop, which is really cute.
And then bookshop's really nice, isn't it?
Really cute. I loved it. And then there's like lovely gardens and a big twisty tree to see. There's just lots going on. It's really
we do. This tree, it makes like 3 or 4 full turns. It's a chestnut. And someone said the other day, it's possibly, guesses range a lot, but it's possibly basically the same age as the house. It's between like 600 to 800 years old, and the house is just under that. So it was either planted at the same time as the foundation went down for the house, or it was a sapling when the house was built. When we had a massive snow day last year, and we were shut, and I was one of the only people who could come in because I live really locally, and I was taking loads of photos. I basically lay down under that tree to take photos of the leaves all covered and just watching the twists there in the tree. It's quite stunning in itself. But we know what we are. We're a more tranquil kind of day out. If you want to have a little bit away from the hustle and bustle of life, come and see our higgledy-piggledy house and gardens.
Marcus, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much. And thanks for all your listeners. Hopefully we've inspired some thoughts about Ightham Mote. Let us know what you think. And I love doing the event side of things. So, it's great that they've sold out. We'll do more in future. And, please do come along and let us know what you think of the place, really, because enjoy it. It's there to be seen and enjoyed.
Hello there, I'm back again to ask you, the listener, an enormous favour. It is Podcast Awards season, and the Irish Podcast Awards are very quickly coming up. And I would really appreciate it if you could vote for Real Life Ghost Stories in the Listener's Choice Award for the Irish Podcast Awards. You just need to go to theirishpodcastawards.ie/voting to cast your vote. The voting is open until October the 19th, 2023. You can vote once per email address, and you can vote from anywhere in the world. You just need to remember to confirm your vote via email, and I promise you it takes 30 seconds, maybe even a minute at most, to cast your vote, and I would appreciate it so much if you could vote for Real Life Ghost Stories. Here's the thing, most indie podcasts don't have budgets to even enter into most of the award ceremonies that go on for podcasting, and voting in a Listener's Choice Award is just a really good way to advertise for that podcast. And the little glimmer of hope that I might actually win brings me a certain amount of joy on a day-to-day basis. So if you are somebody who listens to Real Life Ghost Stories on the reg, if you like the content, I would really appreciate it if you could go to theirishpodcastawards.ie/voting to cast your vote. Thank you. I love you. Enjoy the episode.